Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis of the art and the narrative, as well as personal response to each of these chapters. We'll also be discussing how the individual chapter connects to the rest of the manga as a whole. As usual with these videos, we begin with a reading of the chapter that we are discussing for the episode, but this also begins Volume 12 of Bleach. This will be Chapter 99. So without further ado, let us begin Bleach Volume 12, a Shonen Jump manga with story and art by Kubo Tite. Every year I participate in Shonen Jump's annual Jump Festa event. This year, after leaving the stage, I looked around the convention center for the first time. A lot of fans were cheering me on from behind, but it was kind of embarrassing, so I didn't look back. I really feel bad about that. But what are you supposed to do in a situation like that? Should I have waved? That doesn't seem right either. Kubo Tite. I'm happy, but troubled. Bleach is author Kubo Tite's second title. Kubo made his debut with Zombie Powder, a 4-volume series for Weekly Shonen Jump. To date, Bleach has been translated into numerous languages and has also inspired an animated TV series that began airing in Japan in 2004. Beginning its serialization in 2001, Bleach is still a mainstay in the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump. In 2005, Bleach was awarded with the prestigious Shogakukan Manga Award in the Shonen Boys category. By the way, this is rated T for teen. It is recommended for ages 13 and up. This volume contains fantasy violence. We think a flower on a cliff is beautiful because we stop our feet at the cliff's edge, unable to step out onto the sky, like that fearless flower. Bleach, Volume 12, Flower on the Precipice. These are the Bleach All-Stars and stories. We have our characters Momo Hinamori, Hanataro Yamada, Sosuke Aizen, Ichigo Kurosaki, Yasutora Chad Sato, and Ganju Shiba. The plot. Having vowed to rescue Rukia, Ichigo and his friends go to the Soul Society and finally infiltrate the Seirei-Tei, the city of the Soul Reapers. With the help of Soul Reaper Hanataro Yamada, Ichigo eventually reaches the Senzai-Kyu, where Rukia is being held. But before Ichigo can free her, his old enemy Renji arrives on the scene. Despite being terribly wounded, Ichigo defeats Renji, who makes an unexpected plea. Save Rukia! This is Chapter 99, Dead Black War Cloud. Ichigo! Hey, Ichigo! Are you okay? Speak to me! Assistant Captain Abarai. He defeated an assistant captain. Mr. Ichigo, who exactly are you? Oh, someone's coming 3, no, 4, maybe 5. We don't want company right now. Let's retreat. Take us somewhere quiet. That's... Whoa, no! Abarai! Assistant Captain Abarai, are you alright? I can't believe it. He defeated Renji. Hurry up and grab the other side. I know what to do. Stop panicking. Let's go. Looks like they fled. Shall we give chase? No. Saving Renji is our priority now. Healing ability? I thought the relief company used medicine and stuff. Actually, the other Soul Reapers can only use their spirit energy for combat, but we at the 4th Company can use ours to heal. That's practically our only power. I see. So, how is he? How's Ichigo? It's bad, but I will heal him. I just need a little time. I'll heal him in one night. No! He was like this when I found him. If I had come to his aid sooner. No, it's not your fault. Anyway, I'll contact 4th Company. I'll have them send a high-level rescue unit. That will not be necessary. Just dump him in a cell.
Captain Kachiki! But Renji fought the Ryoka by himself.
No excuses. Ryoka are souls that have illegally entered the Soul Society. He chose to fight alone. Defeat was not an option. We have no use for beaten fools. Now take this wretch away.
Wait! That's no way to speak of...
Shut up!
But Izuru...
We apologize, sir.
I'm sorry, sir.
Oh my, he's very scary.
Captain Ichimaru.
What was that all about? Sixth Company's captain always acts like that. Don't worry about it. I'll get word to the Fourth Company. Come with me, Izuru. Yes, sir.
Thank you!
Whoa. Renji was beaten 5 times to Sunday.
What? Toshiro!
Hey, I'm a captain now. Call me by my title.
Shut up! Why do captains always sneak up on people? Anyway, what are you doing here? Without an adjutant?
I came to warn you. Beware of Third Company.
Huh? Third Company? Izuru's company? Why?
Be especially careful of Ichimaru. I'm not sure about Izuru either. Better to be safe than sorry. Especially. The situation is dire. We've lost an adjutant of the 13 court card companies. This is now a matter for our best people. I will overlook Ichimaru's actions from before.
Thank you.
I am permitting all top officers, including assistant captains, to be armed with Zanpakuto and use full wartime powers within the court. Pass that along to those who could not be here. Gentlemen, let us declare an all-out war on these Ryoka. That is it for Bleach Chapter 99, the title which I will have to return to the beginning to remember. It had a pretty hardcore title, yeah, Dead Black War Cloud. Pretty serious, but we also started the volume, so let's get back to the cover of the volume. We have Sosuke Aizen on the cover of Volume 12, looking pretty stately, pretty straightforward, but, yeah, there's a lot kind of going on now, and as Renji's been defeated, and we have a chapter that really focuses primarily on our Shinigami characters. Having Aizen start this volume off is kind of a nod towards the fact that there is that 14 days to conspiracy, right? There is something more going on among the Shinigami themselves, and Aizen seems to be at the heart of discovering exactly what that is. Now, we know that the Third Company is maybe a little untrustworthy. They're maybe up to something weird, something a little strange. We have reason to be suspicious of them because of their involvement. And certainly that's something that's started to kind of come to a boil in this chapter. So, let's get into it. I do like Kubo having a little bit of embarrassment about what to do about fans and not really knowing how to handle his newfound fame. That's kind of cute. Of course, we don't have confirmation of tobacco use, so light spoilers that a certain Kukaku probably doesn't show up in this volume, and if she does, she ain't smoking. But, let's be real, she's always smoking. Am I right? Anyway, another character poem. I don't think we're meant to know exactly who this character might be, just that it's a male character. You can make the assumption that this might be a certain character or another, but I believe, given the shot that we are given, that we aren't supposed to be entirely sure. I don't think that we've seen a character so far that has looked quite like this shot of just the nose and mouth and all of that. But nevertheless, the poem that we have kind of reflects on the idea of this flower on a cliff, right? That it's beautiful, but that's because we stop at the edge of the cliff and we can't step out like that flower. And so the beauty of the flower is that it goes beyond the limits of gravity, right? That it's not just beautiful because it's a flower. I mean, you can find flowers anywhere, but it's a flower that is against all odds, right? That it's able to have that beauty within a place that we're not necessarily able to reach, right? So if you imagine like a sheer cliff face and this flower growing out the edge, the side of it, right? Whenever I'm reading this poem, I think flower on the cliff's edge, that it's or the flower on the cliff, that it's not just like on the top of it, but rather out to the side where you couldn't get to without falling off the cliff yourself. So there's like an admiration perhaps to this thing that is out of reach or this thing that is beyond us. And maybe that speaks towards some of the things that we've been thinking about thematically so far, right? Of these characters that feel like they can't quite reach these certain potential, or that they're bound, one way or another, either if it's by fear or societal pressures, things like that. But those that can exist outside of that, those are the ones that are truly beautiful, perhaps. I don't know. But Flower on the Precipice is the name for this one, and is clearly a reference to the intro poem, the Flower on the Cliff poem. So we can start to think about, what exactly that might mean, what exactly how that poem and this volume title might factor in, and certainly should we come to get a chapter that's called that, it might illuminate that for us. We're told all the kind of important characters moving forward. We have our Genju, Chad, Ichigo, but also Hanataro, Momo, and Sosuke Aizen. So, yeah, we can expect that Aizen's probably going to be pretty significant since he's on the cover of the volume itself. But it's neat to see Momo here, as she is starting to have a more active role, especially in this chapter itself. And Hanataro as well. We see him kind of in the same position he was healing Ichigo from that shot. Cool that we're going to get some more Chad. I always liked Chad, so we haven't seen very much of him after the party got split up. As you know, we were given a full kind of battle for Uryu and Orihime, as well as Ichigo, as well as Ganju. So Chad's really the only one left outside of, Yorichi, but I don't think we're going to see Mr. Yorichi getting in a fight unless they do. That would be pretty cool. But not in this volume, otherwise they would probably be listed within these All-Stars and Stories, right? Nevertheless, we'll see what this volume has in store for us. We've got a new little plot forward here that catches up right up to it. And here we do begin the actual chapter with a little bit of a straight callback to where we were before, right? Where Renji was clutching at Ichigo, and here he just completely collapses. And I mean, Ichigo's only able to stay up for a little bit longer before collapsing himself. I love that we get this side shot of all the different buildings that have been just torn apart in their melee. Yeah, it's kind of comical almost. Of course, interestingly enough, this was something that was mentioned, I think, in the battle with Ikaku, right? Was that Ikaku's sword, whenever he was knocked unconscious, reverted back from its release state. His Zenpakuto reverted back to its normal kind of form, and that's why Ichigo is able to use the healing sort of. I was going to say just salve, but they had a specific name for it that's never going to come back to me. Anyway, because of that, right? But here we can see, Renji has just kind of maybe fallen unconscious, as has Ichigo, and both of their swords, at least from this top down, have not reverted back yet. Of course, I love that Ganju's, first and foremost checking on Ichigo, but here Hanataro is completely thrown by like the amount of damage that Renji's taken, right? So it's interesting to see their priorities kind of being different. The Ganju's not like, holy shit, like Ichigo, you're a monster. But I think Hanataru, who's lived in this system, understands just how powerful an assistant captain like Renji was, right? An adjutant, or whatever you want to call them, lieutenants. Um, Regardless, he understands just how significant this defeat is, and so he's left wondering who exactly Ichigo might be. Nevertheless, they notice that there's people coming. I do like that Hanataru is the one to recognize the others coming, whether or not he senses the Reietsu, or if he's just particularly flighty himself and perceptive over Ganju, who we know probably is less so. I do like that kind of moment that Hanataru is the one to recognize that. And I like that he's foregrounded here to give the warning to Ganju, who's already got Ichigo thrown up over his shoulder. Um, yeah. Speaking of company, here is Izuru of the Third Company. Along with some other fellows, I don't think we have names for them. I really do like the guy with the bandana in the back. That's a solid design. But nevertheless, we do know old Izuru because he is the lieutenant of the Third Company under Ichimaru again. And so these other fellows go to assist Renji, who looks like he's bleeding out here. And because they arrive to the scene and they don't see anybody else, assumably they don't know how messed up the other guys are. So they could just assume like Renji came here and just got bodied. So they're rightfully so in a bit of a panic. And you can really see Izuru sweating here, and I love how just shook he is. That like whoever these Ryoka are, who they haven't even seen, have killed them. Like, think about this from the Soul Society side of things. For those who haven't like interacted with these people, it's like, okay, our whole military division, who we know are like the powerful fighters, right? The 11th, they've just been getting eradicated. Right, and we know that's large by in part because of Chad, but also Ganju and Ichigo have been fighting their way through a lot of these guys, right? And so it's like, okay, well, they're all getting torn apart. We know that Ikaku and Yumachika have been defeated, and so it's like, geez, okay, all of our strongest fighters and our whole fighting division is getting torn up. And then they find Renji, and they don't even see who it was out of the Ryoka, so they haven't even like positively ID'd everyone that's a Ryoka yet. And already, Chad has been, or not Chad, what am I saying? Renji has completely just found a bloody mess, and whoever fought him has fled. It wasn't, I mean, like, Ichigo is probably leaking. They could probably find, like, if they could follow, I guess, like, blood stains from Ichigo, they probably would. So I gotta assume that Ichigo's closed up enough that, he's not just leading them straight there with a trail of blood. So yeah, it's some real horror movie kind of finding your friends just laid out, bloody murder and all of that. It's a bit wild, and this is kind of unprecedented. I mean, if you remember back to what they were talking about, this is with Jidambo talking about being the gate guardian and not letting anyone through the gates. And it's been however many years, so you know, it's not a very common thing that anybody's able to break into Soul Society, much less someone with the power to do all of this. Um, and like to have this kind of an organized attack. Certainly, if Hollows were to attack, it would be something much less overwhelming. Though it seems as though Hollows tend not to attack the Soul Society, as that hasn't been brought up really. You gotta assume that they can show up there, but Hollows probably prefer to feast in the relative safety of the human realm, right? Nevertheless, I do like that, Izuru insists upon, like, hey, we're not going to continue to chase them, which is probably a smart move since he doesn't know that Ichigo is cow for the count right now, and that Ganju's not doing so hot himself. Neither had fully recovered by the time they got to Renji anyway. But I like that Izuru does make the call here to not chase, but instead focus on saving Renji. Now, whether or not you interpret this one way or another is up to you, the reader, right? Because we know that we're supposed to be especially with this volume, or this chapter even, Hitsugaya Toshiro, he tells us to kind of keep an eye on the third, even Izuru. And so you have to wonder, again, Izuru's motivations here. And I brought that up last time Izuru was interacting with Hinamori Momo. But you have to wonder what Izuru's motivations are, because he didn't stop Renji, right? And he didn't report Renji going out. And now that Renji's been completely destroyed, instead of continuing to chase down the Ryoka and maybe actually capture them, he is instead choosing to focus on just saving Renji. So maybe they could have done something to keep Renji from coming to this fate had they tried to warn anybody, and then furthermore, they could have maybe done something to stop the invasion. Or I say invasion, I mean it's 5 people. It's still an invasion, nevertheless. But they could have maybe done something against the Ryoka had they given chase. I mean, it would have been dangerous. So you can understand why it might go one way or the other. Why Izuru might be someone that you couldn't trust, or perhaps you could be someone you could. And I think Kubo does a pretty good job of keeping the characters, keeping it unclear and never giving us too much of an answer for any of these characters for why they might be acting one way or another. There's a few other little tiny things in this chapter that I will point you towards that can maybe give you some insights, though. Some things that I feel are a little bit more subtle. I do like that here we jump back to the underground. We're given pretty clear visuals. That's where we are. Of course, Kubo's patented shot of the sky before we get a scene swap. But I like this long panel down the bridge where we've got the dialogue kind of. I say bridge, what am I talking about? Ladder. Where we've got dialogue that kind of step us down the ladder. I think that's cute. As well as step us down the page. It does lead to a bit of a transition where we have to go from the bottom of this bottom right of the panel up to this left one, but that's fine. It's not too bad. Nevertheless, yeah, I like that what gets brought up here is, that, oh, hey, you have a healing ability. Because, again, we were talking about that earlier, Ikaku having to have the medicine and everything. Well, if you could just heal somebody, you wouldn't need to really carry medicine on you. But as it turns out, people in the fourth company are the people that can use their Rietsu or their spiritual abilities to actually heal people. And so all of a sudden, maybe the medical squad makes a little bit more sense whenever you have magical healing abilities. Now, if you do remember, Rukia actually exhibited having some healing capacity back near the beginning of the series. I believe that she heals Orihime or Tatsuki, one of the two, maybe both, whenever that entire incident happens with Acid Wire. It's done a little bit off screen. It isn't really shown that much to us, but we can assume that she used some sort of, Hado or Kido or whatever you want to call it, right? Some sort of magic. Nevertheless, Ganju's trying to kind of play it cool here, trying to check on Ichigo, and Hanataro is taking this very seriously. I like that he cinches his kind of medicine pouch off of his back, and he's like, oh, I'm going to heal him in one night, right? So this is something that, I like this moment because it's something Hanataro actually can finally do, and it's actually in his domain. And so I like that we get a moment for him to maybe shine, where we can see a little bit more of his character being utilized. And it's neat that, they ran into somebody who joined their side, even though they did take him hostage. It's you could say maybe convenient that he's there to patch Ichigo up so that we can continue to have these shonen battles with Ichigo back to back to back. But I do think it's cool to have another character that can kind of fill a role that isn't filled right here. I know technically, yes, Orihime could reject the event of his injury, but them getting split up, she obviously can't now. Which then makes you think, well, Chad's the odd one out, because Chad's the only person who doesn't have somebody that can heal him. So we'll see what happens to Chad whenever we get there. But for now, it seems like Ichigo at the very least is going to be safe. He is still pulling blood, so maybe he wasn't leaking. I like that we do get the, it's unclear if this is from Ichigo or it's more like, hey, that is where Ganju did get cut across the shoulder. But it's nice to see that those wounds still exist and there's still some blood on Ganju, as there would have been anyway for him carrying Ichigo. But you can see he's got this expression like, oh man, well, maybe he is a little concerned nevertheless. I like that we come back to the shock of the black panel on the top with Momo only silhouetted just barely in white. I see silhouetted kind of Momo against the black. It's a striking kind of page turn from this kind of moment of Ichigo injured of silence with Ganju to shock of Momo, and I love this really good expression work to really sell her fear. Because this is the first time seeing Renji and seeing him basically killed. And Kira, of course, is reporting this to Momo. So it's interesting that Kira confides in Momo, that Kira kind of speaks to Momo, although, again, Momo seems like the sort of character who is very easily swayed by others. We get a lot of Momo in this chapter, and we see how much she wears her emotions on her sleeve, how much she's willing to take things at face value from pretty much anybody, and how she's maybe not the best participant in sleuthing through a conspiracy, but might easily be the kind of pawn of others. That said, if I was going to say, if that said, it could all be an act, or it could be her really kind of over putting herself in these things, but it's kind of doubtful. Like, she seems like the most sincere character so far, whereas others might have something going on. Nevertheless, she's like literally at tears, and I do like this expression from Kira that like he does seem a little bit, like shocked, or that there's some concern there. Nevertheless, he proposes contacting Force Company, which, as we know, do specialize in healing, right? So they can send a rescue unit to take care of him. And of course, Byakuya shows up immediately. And again, the absolute shock on both of their faces as he's just there, looming over them. And I like that it does get brought up later that, they're constantly showing up behind people. They're able to kind of mask their presence and show up very quickly, which speaks towards their capacity. Nevertheless, yeah, Byakuya really kind of heartless about this. And you have to wonder, if there's anything more to it. I mean, obviously, he has some disdain because Renji did do something against the rules, right? Byakuya is very clearly somebody who follows the rules and structures of Soul Society, right? Yes, there are structures that have benefited him greatly, that have seen him rise to a captain position. He's been a member of this aristocratic family his entire life. He definitely benefits from the structures that are in place. But nevertheless, he upholds those structures too, even whenever it's somebody like his vice captain. He insists, jump him in his cell. And I like that, Momo starts to like fight back against that, right? That she's like, hey, well, he was fighting the Ryoka, like he took it upon himself. And Byakuya really kind of brings like a serious moment to this, where he's like, well, yeah, Renji chose to fight alone. If he chose to fight alone, he shouldn't have been defeated. And we don't have any use for like a fool like that, right? And he really does consider Renji to be a fool, because he's like, well, this person Renji didn't have the power to make that decision, or well, rather, he made the decision without the power to really carry it through, right? So he considers him a fool. And so Byakuya really is like kind of one that sees like almost that power should be wielded righteously, and that those who wield their power without the capability to actually enact what they were seeking to do are foolish, which makes sense. I mean, it's kind of harsh, especially here. And yeah, maybe Renji could have gotten all, because he was at a meeting with a lot of the other vice captains, right? Renji could have gotten them all to come with him. He didn't have to go alone. And we come to find out, of course, that Renji went alone because of everything with Rukia, and because of his personal kind of connection to Ichigo. But clearly that was a pretty foolish decision, and Byakuya has no sort of love lost over that. That he's got to kind of, I don't know, maybe it confirms suspicions Byakuya had of Renji. Um, Alternatively, for us, it could help fuel the sort of ways we feel about Byakuya, right? Where the fact that he has no sympathy for Renji, especially even calls him a fool and a wretch, um, it speaks a little bit towards maybe Byakuya being on the other side of this conspiracy, or at least being so heartless that he could be manipulated by somebody who was pulling the strings. Nevertheless, here, I like that immediately as she starts to kind of speak back to him. And I love that we get Byakuya not even in panel, but like in the corner, not even like facing away. And it takes Izuru to be like, look, shut up. Like, you shouldn't speak back. Um, Byakuya just looks over his shoulder and then leaves as they apologize. And I think it's a pretty striking moment. Like, Izuru very much understands the decorum of Soul Society. I think that's what this shows here, is that he understands like the way in which they're meant to interact, even if he doesn't always maybe follow that, but it seems like he does, and he's willing to kind of chide his peer Momo to get her to kind of fall in line. Which, it's kind of messed up. I mean, everybody probably thinks that, right? Certainly, Kira was willing to call a special unit from the 4th to take care of Renji until Byakuya had this sort of response. And I love the way that this gets paneled out, where he's like looking and he's like kind of in the entryway here, and then down the bottom he's leaving through it, leaving as quickly as he goes. And of course, we straight shot to the next panel to have another surprise entrance on the next page, on page turn of Ichimaru again, right? And he's just in the corner, like he's been there the whole time, to further surprise Hinamori. And now, I was talking about like little subtle moments here. I love the little tiny smile on Izuru, right? That he's so quick to be like, "Oh, Captain Ichimaru," right? And of course, Gin just being like, "Oh, well, what's all that about?" So his company's captain always acts like that. Don't worry about it. So Gen's really kind of like, yeah, Kajika's being very severe. We'll get word of the 4th company. Like, he really smooths over the situation for them and really assuages their worries, which is interesting, right? If Gen's really trying to sow discord, maybe he is by having them do something exactly against Byakuya's wishes. But it wouldn't make sense to let Renji just bleed out and die if Gen really is trying to undermine the Soul Society in some way, or those who might be allies to Rukia. So it's curious, right? Nevertheless, he does pull Izuru away from Momo and separate the two of them, as you have to wonder, what business they might be on. We do get to see Gen later, but Izuru is not with him, so you wonder. Nevertheless, this does give... I do like this big wave that Gen's given back here. Look at this. Anyway, we do get this, like, just a moment of silence for Momo, as then she gets surprised by her own captain. No, it's not her captain. What am I saying? Her captain's Aizen. But she gets surprised by Toshiro, right? Who is somehow shorter than she is. He is supposed to be the, the what is it, the kind of boy prodigy, right? So maybe his height is a little bit more because he is young relatively. Nevertheless, you can tell that, like, despite the kind of different decorum that was on display with both Gen and Byakuya, and her kind of breaking that sort of social grace to speak back to Byakuya on all of that, here she refers to Toshiro very frankly, right? And I like that he has to be like, "Hey, look, I'm a captain now." So maybe you get the sense that this is something a little bit recent that he became a captain. We also get to see Hitsugaya Zenpakuto and the sort of star shape that it has for its hilt, its guard. Kind of cool, neat. Like that it's slung over his shoulder. It's just a little bit of a different design than what we've seen from others that wear theirs at their hip. Nevertheless, she brings up, why does captains always sneak up on you? And then she asks, why is Itsugaya here without his vice captain, right? Matsumoto, who he does seem to constantly be leaving without telling her where he's going. So it does seem as though he operates pretty independent of her, much to her exhaustion or exasperation, even. But here, I do like this like kind of zoomed out panel here, and then we get a closer zoom in, and the stifling in the background, and the more serious expression as he tries to warn her about the third company, right? Um, and Ichimaru especially, but he's not sure of Yuzuru either. And I like the look away and then look over, back and forth with Momo as she's pulled into this more serious kind of shadowed moment, right? Better safe than sorry. So it seems as though Hitsugaya has his own suspicions. And again, you have to wonder, you know, is it Hitsugaya that is up to no good and he's sowing this sort of division and he's trying to keep her from, siding with Izuru, who is level headed and, makes a little bit of sense, and Gin, who seems to be kind of doing a lot of things on his own. It's interesting because we have these different characters that seem to be very individualistic agents, right? And certainly, it makes sense that Hitsugaya is suspicious of Gin, not just because of the captain's meeting they had earlier and what he overheard between Gin and Aizen, right? But also, it seems as though he's come here to warn Momo, and you have to think that maybe because of the casual way that they speak to each other, maybe he's trying to warn Momo because she's somebody that he might be close to. But otherwise, it's interesting to warn Momo anyway because she does seem like she's the type to overreact to things. So if anything, you have to wonder who's manipulating who, right? Byakuya, who's being so severe as to get a rise out of Momo, Gin, who's trying to kind of smooth things over, say everything's fine, but then isolate Momo by taking Kira away, are Hitsugaya, who is here to drive suspicion into Momo, right? So, yeah, is that suspicion warranted, or is it a manipulation? It's unclear, but nevertheless, the whenever I talk about like the kind of conspiracy thickening and the kind of more I suppose less battle plot and more of an intrigue plot building. It's because of moments like this where we don't really know the character's motivations entirely. And on the face of it, if we're just reading all face value, it's like, well, Gin is vaguely mysterious and evil looking. He seems like a real snake in the grass kind of character. But he is constantly de-escalating situations, constantly, right? So he's gotten Ichigo out of the Serite whenever Ichigo first arrived without killing Ichigo, even though he probably could. And he literally disarmed that situation with Jidambo. And then he went on to kind of try to take the blame just entirely for that entire thing. Like he was like, yeah, whatever, it's on me. Um, I mean, it did cause the captains to all have to go to a meeting where, and then the Ryoka had a moment to invade otherwise. So, you could cast that into suspicion. But just taking it at face value, again, he's constantly de-escalating things. Whenever a fight was about to break out between Zaraki Kenpachi and Byakuya, whenever they were starting to threaten each other, again, carried Kenpachi off. And in here again, Gin is smoothing things over. So we constantly get Gin kind of de-escalating things, but also kind of having that really hands-on, going there personally to handle stuff. Meanwhile, and Gin constantly acting like, even though he's very clearly suspicious, constantly being like, oh, there's nothing why are you suspecting me, kind of thing, which only makes him more suspicious, right? Take Toshiro at face value. We have Toshiro who, he's just trying, it seems like he's trying to warn his friend of this person who seems very clearly suspicious. And then to take Aizen at face value, it seems as though Aizen suspects Gin, regardless of what's going on, but Aizen also, being somebody who understands a lot about Soul Society, is trying to kind of warn Renji about these bigger sort of things happening. maybe to find an ally in him. Who knows? Because again, Renji used to be a part of Aizen's squad back in the day. So yeah, there's a lot of different moving parts, and like I said, you can take them at face value, you can read more into them, you can start to suspect things, and I think that's what makes this interesting is that you can't come to any for sure conclusions yet, but there is a lot going on. Finally, we get back to old man Genryusai, who I forget, in these earlier volumes of Bleach, he is drawn generally to look a lot more kind of like a wizened, old, sort of falling away at the bone character, whereas in later volumes he's drawn maybe with a little bit more virility. There's times when certainly I think the facial, like the hair especially, changes a lot, but not just that, but like his general gaunt look. He looks maybe a bit healthier later on. I bring that up because I've decided to voice him with this. Oh, we've lost the adjutant of the 13 court guard companies. I know I've given a very kind of deep, sort of commanding and regal voice. Now is a matter for our best people. Something like that, closer to that. I need to maybe swallow before I attempt, that kind of lower bottom of the throat. This is now a matter for our best people. This is now a matter. I don't know. Anyway, nevertheless, I've given him maybe less of a Frel voice than expected given his countenance, but I also know, kind of how he starts to be depicted more and more. Whereas early on, you could maybe read this person as Frel even though he's the leader of all of these captains, right? He is the guy that's in charge. But there's other design details, and you'll see them change as the series goes on. So kind of keep that in mind. Just like how Kenpachi's hair sort of changes a bunch. I like that we get these very like distant sort of. You can sort of tell who everyone is, but still. I like that Renji, of course, gets mentioned, of course, overlooking Ichimaru's actions from before, and that all officers, including vice captains, are to be armed and use full wartime powers within the court, right? So within the Seirete, they can completely use, release their swords, do whatever they need to. We get the shot of 10 of the captains. Of course, the captain of the first is here. It's Genryusai. So we get 10 of the other ones. So there's 2 that are missing, right? And we know that one of them is of the 13th. And then the other one is Hitsugaya, who is... I'm trying to remember exactly if he's like the 4th or the 9th. One of those. Anyway. No, I think he's the 9th. The 4th is the healing squad, right? So he's not those. I think he's the 9th. So I don't remember all the numbers off the top of my head so easily. Nevertheless, I could get there by like process of elimination if I took my time. But right now in the story, they haven't told us exactly who all is the captain of what. In fact, we only know the names of maybe a third of the characters here that are depicted. But we get various depictions of these different characters, right? And I do like that, we have various characters looking more serious than not. I do love just kind of the look that we have from everyone. Kuretsuchi especially is looking great, but pretty good kind of shot. And then I love this kind of the gums and this more serious, like, oh, this is an all-out war. War has been declared. You gotta love that. That it is a very serious moment being declared. And here in the in-between, we just have Momo, her back turned, shadow cast over her, as she doesn't seem sure of what to do, or maybe even who to trust. So that's it for this chapter. As always, I'm a big fan of the art. I do like that we get a lot of the characters depicted. There aren't, there's mostly a lot of just expressive sort of scenes, like that look on Momo as she's got this concern that weighs heavily on her, the constant shock, the ease Gin seems to have. the way that Kira lights up whenever he sees Gin is absolutely melts my heart. Um, just in general, the severity of Baikua. Uh, yeah, there's a lot there. This expression from Momo, I think, is especially one that catches me every time that I turn the page into this. That she's so stricken by seeing Renji that way, and I mean we get that also here with Hanataro, right? So it's interesting to see like that kind of connection. Another kind of small thing here, and it's worth pointing out. We can see the scar that Ichigo left with the slash of his blade as he cut all the way that far back. We can still see it smoking, and you can even see the depth of it. It's definitely more than a foot deep into the ground where Ichigo sliced through with his Zanpakuto. So cool that we get to see the effects. Not nearly as deep a ravenous blast that he had initially against Kisuke, but yeah, cool stuff nevertheless. Anyway, let me go back to the beginning of this and I guess give my overall kind of thoughts on the chapter to kind of close out. Obviously, fan of this chapter. I do like that it starts to get a little bit more of the ball rolling on the intrigue plot that we've had on the back burner. I mean, the last couple chapters have been very straightforward, kind of combat and deepening Renji's character. But now we're taking a little bit of a break from that. We literally have Ichigo out of commission for a day, so we have excuse to focus on these other characters and what they're doing during that interim time. And so, yeah, it's kind of neat to see the scramble that's happening and the suspicions that are growing. I like that sort of stuff. And I think it's rare to see that in a shonen manga, which are often, conspiracy and things can happen, but they're very much more often focused on just trying to get characters slotted up for fights. And again, that's not to say that like Bleach isn't doing that or doesn't end up doing that in more transparent ways down the line. Just I think part of a reason why this arc tends to be so beloved is that it marries both an intrigue plot and a like fight your way up the ranks sort of plot in ways that are captivating and intermingled in ways you might not expect, which is a lot of fun. So yeah, is what it is, what it is, what it is. Let's talk about spoilers, though. Let's talk about how this connects to the rest of the series. First and foremost, Aizen on the cover of this one. We all know this is the last time that we'd see Aizen this way. Of course, I love that Kubo seems like he went out of his way to make Aizen as plain as possible. Give him like shoulder-length brown hair, brown eyes, glasses, make him as unassuming as we can, so that he can really do that whole Clark Kent to Superman transformation, but evil. It's good stuff. Of course, this is also Aizen, though notably Aizen with his hair pushed back, right? Either that or this is a number of other thick-lipped characters with their hair pushed back that sweeps that far down and with dark hair. So it could be Ginjo or it could be Kurishiki, but it's probably Aizen, let's be real. Also, the poem is incredibly reflective of Aizen too, right? Of this idea of being beyond what somebody's capable of, right? Of this thing that's admirable because it's a step out into this dangerous place, and we're unable to step into the sky like that fearless flower. And certainly, Aizen sees like his own transcendence as being an act of fearlessness. That there's a certain amount of like idolation of being apart and above and different in those ways, which would drive him to, push beyond his limits and beyond what people think should be reasonable. Yeah, I was seeing. Do we get? Yeah, I don't think we ever get a chapter that's called "Flower on the Precipice." Or no, we do. It's chapter 100. Well, here I am. Foolish me. Nevertheless, the characters collapsing one after each other. That does end up getting done quite a few times in Bleach. Usually, a character is only able to kind of keep their composure as long as the fight lasts, and then once the fight's over, they just kind of pass over. They fall over. They are finished. Um, Fairly common, both. I mean, not in Bleach, but in shonen manga in general, right? So yeah, yeah, we'll see this sort of interaction happen a couple of times. Of course, the shock over exactly who Ichigo might be or what Ichigo might be probably meant to give us another nod towards Ichigo being special, Ichigo being other, Ichigo having a little bit more going on with him. Obviously, we're going to be getting the um, Kenpachi fight next with Ichigo, where we will get a little bit more insight, or at least will complicate that idea of what Ichigo's exactly got it going on, as he'll have to, interact with Zangetsu or Old Man Zangetsu, as well as Shiro or Shirosaki or True Zangetsu, whatever you want to call him. So, yeah, anti Ichigo, non Ichigo, opposite Ichigo, whatever words you have for that. I don't know if the guy with the bandana actually ever gets named, or if I'm completely blanking on his name. I know that he showed up earlier too, so I think he was intended to be another member of one of these divisions, but I'm not sure which. These other two guys are designs that I don't think we ever see again. But that bandana guy design is certainly striking, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was like a member of like something like the Seventh. Um, but I don't know. The fact that he defers to Izuru, because Izuru is the lieutenant here, makes sense, but it also could speak towards him being a member of the Third underneath Izuru's command. I don't know. Anyway, interesting that he speaks about the Fourth Company being able to use their spiritual energy, their Ryatsu, to actually heal, while the others can only use theirs for combat. Assumably, all Soul Reapers can maybe use theirs to heal to an extent, but maybe that might not be the case. Maybe there's, by and large, only the Fourth can kind of do it, and anyone who shows potential for that tends to kind of get put towards the Fourth. I'm trying to think of other Soul Reapers that were able to heal, or that healed in other instances, but those moments of healing often don't come up in the series, outside of, Unohana and Hanataro. Of course. Ooh, excuse me. This moment with Momo is foreshadowing that bigger moment with Momo later. So here, she's upset over, like, she's clearly in shock over Renji's near death, right? That he's severely wounded, and whenever Byakuya, someone who's more powerful than her, expresses, not having no concern over this, or a differing opinion, um, she's willing to kind of raise her fist against him, right? That she's going to speak back to him and out of line. And later on, whenever Aizen is found dead, she actually strikes out against Gen, and it's Kira again that has to kind of come in to, delegate even. So it's cool that we get that reflected here too. That we get like that in short here, or in small here. Um, but also that both Kira and Momo represent these different sort of mentalities, where Momo almost represents the sort of uh, thing that Renji was doing, right? Acting on her own, acting out of self kind of interest, not exactly in a thoughtful way, whereas Kira is kind of siding with the strictures of Soul Society. Yes, what Baiku said was pretty messed up, but also falls in line with exactly how things should go. Of course, I don't think Gen's scared at all. Izuru being happy that Gen's there again, cute. I think it's because maybe he takes solace in the fact that like he trusted in his captain entirely. You really get that sense from the entirety of the Soul Society arc that Kira is really willing to put all of his trust in Gen. And I don't know if it ever gets explicitly told to us why. If it does, I completely forget. But Kira does take a good bit of comfort in Gen being here, and is very quick to follow him out. Of course, Toshiro shows up in his short. Captain's sneaking up on people. This begins the Bleach, I'm behind you surprise. Now, here I assume Hitsugaya is suspicious of the third just because of what he's overheard with Aizen and Gen. But, because, like, at this point, not everybody's going to be aware of what Gen did at the gates with Ichigo. And so, Gen being kind of, like, Gen maybe having to do with the invasion is something that perhaps Hitsugaya is a little bit critically concerned with. And we see how that eventually gets, he gets manipulated there, where his suspicions of Gen, and certainly Gen's trying to act in a suspicious way here. I think that's also the case, is that Gen's trying to draw suspicion to himself. One, to maybe give the Ryoka more of a clear to actually go about things and cause chaos. But then two, to keep eyes off of all of the meddling that Aizen and company are currently up to. So, yeah. It's interesting. Of course, Yukitake is still not here. Interesting that Chushiro still not present. Chalk that up to illness, or perhaps up to getting to the bottom of things. Probably just illness. Probably just the Mimihagi virus. Nevertheless, yeah, I was speaking towards like, man, Yamamoto does look kind of frail in a lot of this early stuff. Also, his eyebrows, I think, end up being much longer, whereas his beard ends up being depicted differently too. I love the shot of everybody, and then Komamura is just the basket. But that's it. That's all that I have for this one. Not a lot else. Not a lot else. I'm getting all tongue-tied. Jeez, it's late here. I'm recording this pretty late. You may have heard the yawns or me having to constantly return to my water as my throat dries out. But I apologize for all that. Again, I try to do all these in one take. Try to do these unedited, unscripted. So you'll get a bit of that. I'm also working quite a bit, so I don't have a lot of time during the day to record these. Nevertheless, that is it for this one, folks. Thank you so much for watching to this point. Please do give a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I do these every day, so long as I'm capable of it. I like reviewing all this, and if you like watching it, this is definitely the place for you. I've got, several hundred more chapters to go. Nevertheless, if you want to support me in a different way, you can always support me on Patreon. Right now, the names of all my current patrons are on screen, and I want to give a thanks to all of you folks. Thank you very much. If you want to have your name on the screen at the end of the video, or if you want to just support me for however much you desire, for however long as you desire, feel free to go over to the Patreon and check that out. It's pretty easy, and does help the channel. I do appreciate it. Otherwise, that's it for this one, folks. As always, this has been Karker Gold, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.